9:30 or just past 9:30, so we'll start the meeting. And we'll start out with the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? If not, can I have a mover? John? Everybody in favor?
No.
That's carried. Okay, thank you. Then we're going to go to the minutes of the Agriculture Service Board meeting minutes of April 14th. Are there any errors or omissions? Tori?
I'll move the minutes of the Agriculture Service Board meeting, April 14th.
Okay, thank you. Tori moves the minutes. Everybody in favor? That's carried. We'll move on to the Supervisor of Agriculture Service report, and I think they're all sitting in place already there. So whoever wants to take it on himself to start there.
I'll roll through it for you, and
Okay,
of
thanks,
course,
Gary.
like always, just stop if there's any questions. The Ag Service Board grant, it comes at varying times throughout the year. When I did this report up, we had not received it yet. It's come in here in the last couple weeks. We got the full amount. What happens with that is we report on our activities on what we did during the year back to the government in the spring, and they see if we did what we said we were going to do, and we've always got our full allotment. So we're carrying out the duties that we said that we were going to. Moving on to mowing. So the first cut of gravel roads is complete at this time. We're into the second cut. We're ahead of schedule. There's less grass this year than in past. The first cut, yeah, pretty slow, but now there's less for sure. Hamlets and subdivisions. We've done some of these 3 times this year just to make them look nicer. Sometimes when things are dry, the weeds pop up, so we want those to look nice, and we think they do. Paved roads.
Yes, they're nice. Thank you for that.
Yes, thanks. And we've spent a little bit more effort this year just on. We always compare ourselves to the other municipalities around, and we want them to look nice. We want to be top notch. So paved roads, we started early. We start with our paved roads in June. It was dry before June, and then when June hit, it was rain. So those roads grew back quite quickly, so we've done them a few times this year. We've also done mowing for weed control, so when you get out in an area, mostly isolated areas where there's narrow right-of-ways and there's susceptible crops to spray, we need to go mow some of those out if they're solid weeds. So we do a bunch of that. We try to organize a route and do it efficiently. As far as the level of service, we anticipate.
Can I interrupt for a minute, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. You talk about weed control. Is that regular cropland falls underneath that too, that weed control or not?
That would be under weed inspection if we're looking at weeds in a private land.
Is that on the agenda? Weed inspection?
We will cover that under the weed control. We will discuss weed inspection and weed notices and stuff like that. We'll try not to get into any specifics.
No, I'm not going to mention any names, but there is a corner section. You know what I'm talking about, probably. And it's getting to be a pretty sad situation. I know for a fact the guy is having maybe some mental issue, but the thing is, it is the county what can step in down there, I guess, and do something.
We'll carry that one through to weed control, and I'll talk, if we want to talk specifics, we'll have to go in camera.
Yeah, okay.
Level of service measures as far as that goes for mowing, we anticipate we will have a little bit of a surplus. It's easy going, the mowing, like we said, and then some of the areas up north and in the Sundial area, we don't anticipate we're going to need to mow again. If we do, it'll be very quick. Normally, the first mow takes approximately 3 months. The second round takes 6 weeks. It could be quicker than that. We've cut the mowers down. You don't want to be done too early, then the kochia comes back and is a snow trap. So we're looking good there. Moving on to weed control. So most of the roadside spraying, we do a third of the county each year. This year, the main focus of that was in Division 6 and 7. We also did quite a bit of spraying in Division 5, just less traffic, and it requires less grading, so then you're getting the weeds on top of the road. So we've spent some extra effort there trying to control those weeds. Custom spray work, we do that for Volker-Steven through the Department of Highways. They give us a budget of $28,000 this year. We spent it, and then we asked for more. They give us up to $40,000, and we sprayed that amount. We are finding more weeds on highways with the lack of mowing. So normally they set out and start mowing the same time we do. Now they're a little further back, and they do more mowing up into the fall, so we're having to spray more. And we're probably going to ask for $40,000 to start with next year, and then they're pretty generous to us. If we see issues, they'll give us some more money. So we're working well with them. Road top vegetation control. This is basically how we sprayed in Division 5 and some of the less traveled areas. We're using a pre-emergent. We started spraying the pre-emergent in May. We add glyphosate or something that'll contact anything that's come up. It was so dry, we got a lot done, and it requires a quarter inch of rain to push this stuff and create a barrier. We were wondering if it was going to work, and then the rain in June really put us ahead. We were able to get all these roads done, and you wouldn't notice because the weeds just didn't come up. There was probably 4 to 6 miles of road that we left and we didn't do, and the weeds that came later on in July were just immense. So it was good for the grader operators to see how that chemical is working, and if you don't apply it, what happens. So weed inspection. So here's where we're talking, where you give a weed notice on a property if nothing's being done. We do have a weed notice outstanding right now. There's only been a couple done on a property north of the river, and what happens is if there's no control by that date, we will go in and take action. Last year we did have to take action on a full quarter section where we sprayed. Wasn't being farmed. We have to be careful with soil erosion. Now, normally you wouldn't. So a little bit of cover is good, but terrible weed situation is not good. And we hope that there's going to be some action on that weed notice right away. So
This question here on the weed control there with the kind of thistle, and because I've seen a little bit more of that around in pastures and that. Do you ask the people the farmer to do it, or do you how do you go about that?
Yeah, what we do is we have a weed inspector that he systematically goes through the county, and we know all the hot spots. We mark them with GPS from the previous year, and there's usually a couple hundred spots. The weed inspector is contacting often between 50 and 100 people a year about private land. We make requests that they do something if we deem it more than usual situation, and we get really good compliance when we talk to people. We do it nice. It's a firm but fair attitude. Like, most people don't want the weed issues either, right? They're good farmers. They don't want that. So, our weed inspector is every single day he's writing notes on who he's contacted, so with various type of weeds. And that comes back to our own weed control programs. If we can't do a good job on our roads, how do I tell somebody that they got to keep care of their weeds? That's why we do a big effort, probably more than most, to keep control, especially when we know a farmer doesn't want those weeds and he's working with us. We'll do whatever we can to take those weeds out. But yeah, a lot of our weed issues are in acreages a lot of times too. sometimes in hamlets as well, with lots that are owned by privately owned companies. So they just don't, they're not farmers, so they don't understand why the weeds are bad. So
Who is the weed inspector, Mr. Chairman?
Aaron Bradley is our current weed inspector. We also have, I'm also appointed as weed inspector, and the assistant fieldman is also appointed. Aaron does most of the weed inspection. I will step in when it gets more difficult.
Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a question on weeds, like at this time of year, before they go to seed, or they're just about ready to go to seed, some of them, is it better to mow them? Because spraying, what do you do with the seed then? Like, is it, what's the optimal time to get the situation kind of in hand?
Yeah, so we've slowed our spraying down. We will spray a couple bad patches here and there, but with the dry, it's not a good time to spray. I mean, if you're spraying a field condition where you're total burnout, fine, but the chemical's not working as well. So, yeah, a lot of the weeds are too late to control. Kochia, you know, it's better to mow it if you can or whatever, but chemical earlier would have been better. We will pick up our weed control efforts for Canada thistle. A little bit of a frost, and then after that frost, hopefully a little bit of moisture. Like right now, the plants are so dusty that it's difficult to kill much. So,
And just one follow-up, what would you rate as the worst weed in the county right now? Is it kochia weed, do you think, or?
the two it is definitely kochia, and kochia does not fall on the provincial weed list. It does in Lethbridge County because we've upgraded it. Most counties, they're not putting in the effort to control kochia like we are. The area that the north end of the county is much worse. Across west of Barrens, all the way across the top is where we have a lot of kochia. So, and it grows right on top of the road, and yeah, and then Canada thistle is the other one that we're mainly concerned with, and we'll send out spot sprayers. And like Canada thistle is very noticeable right now because it's fluffing off, right? And it looks ugly. You drive up across a patch and you notice right away.
Okay, Ann?
Just a question, Gary. Are you having those conversations at your provincial conference? I'm just thinking if we're really concentrating hard on the kochia weed and, you know, all the areas surrounding us aren't, is that a bit of an issue or not?
It's an issue for them because I think their pressure that they get from the agriculture community to do something with the kochia when you're driving down the road and it's 4 or 5 feet. They do try to control it. It's just not something that they're enforcing on private land. So if there was a solid kochia field, they can't even give a weed notice on it.
So regionally, are you guys having that discussion, the importance of it?
Absolutely. I get questioned a lot on how are you doing this, because the others don't have it on upgraded, and they're like they're considering it, and it becomes very difficult because you spend a lot of money and effort doing it. I know our farmers appreciate it because we're trying. Others, you know, how would you like to be against a quarter section of solid kochia? And there's nothing you can do. So, yeah, we are having these discussions. Regionally, most off kochia, you don't find it as further you go north, so as much.
So, Gary, how effective is it spraying with heat, like if it's over 30 degrees, like in the afternoon?
Our sprayers shut down. We follow the label to a T. I know some farmers, you got to push it because you don't get very many good spray days. We shut down on what the label says for wind and heat. Usually, as soon as that says 28, we're stopping.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you contract out high clearance sprayers for your large plots at all, or these fields that need to be done, or are we trying to use roadside implements to do big areas?
On a weed notice that we had to act, we don't have, very rarely does it come that we have to act on a weed notice. On the one we had to act on last year, we hired a contractor. We don't have the equipment that can cover that area, and they do it much more efficiently. We do not want to bounce our big 3-ton through some of these fields, so in small areas, say it's 10 acres, if we had to do something like that, we'd certainly do it. We have half-ton units for that, so. Moving on, biocontrol agents for leafy spurge. We put those out every year, and the Alberta Invasive Species Council is who we put those out with, and they're going to be here later today, so I won't steal the thunder on that one. We've also been coordinating a video for leafy spurge control. A bunch of us has gotten together. This was led by Lethbridge County. We think it's important, and we're working with the Alberta Species Council, and I hope she'll talk about that today as well. For roadside spraying, all of our targets have been met already. The 33% target has been exceeded by quite a bit. We're using more economical chemicals this year on some of it, just because there's no residual. You can run into residual problem when it gets into a drought. It could stick around too long. A little bit of whiff of something. Well, next year your sugar beets or your canola doesn't grow. So we want to stay out of that situation. This year is a rare. I have not had a call about spraying into someone's field. Imagine you folks that are involved in spraying, that you're making your outside round, you're up against your neighbor's seed canola. That's the most dangerous round of spraying you're probably going to do. At the county, that's what we do every day. We're spraying along everybody's susceptible crops. It's very delicate. In the past, we tried to stay away from these high-end crops, but everything's worth quite a bit of money right now. With that said, where the right-of-ways are narrow, we've got more aggressive. So if there's a right-of-way that's 10 feet wide, and we know there's another 20 feet there, and we're along a pea field with Canada thistle or kochia, we will spray. We'll leave a little bit of a buffer, but we'll spray up to it because we think the farmers want those weeds taken out. And if there's an error, it's on the county right away still. And with this year getting a little more aggressive, because these areas got to the point where we had to take care of some of them, nobody has phoned. So they weren't even worried about us spraying the weeds. I assume they wanted them gone. So, and you are allowed to fill out a no spray zone if you do not want spray along your property. And that means you're responsible for the weed control. This year we noticed it's the first year that some of these areas were not as good as they should have been. We will be, when we issue the permit next year, we will be discussing the responsibility that they have to take control of these. I mean, we'd be happy to spray them, but if you got a no spray, that you're going to mow them. We still come across and mow twice per year. Most of them, they do have mowers, a lot of the guys, but, you get busy in harvest, the mower gets parked, right? So, we'll move on to pest control. Grasshoppers. We did our survey in late August, and the grasshopper numbers varied across the board. I'm told by the guys that did the survey for us that they were up in some areas and mostly flat. There's actually, when we surveyed, looked similar to last year. If you look at the front of my truck today, it'll tell you that the grasshopper numbers are up. And there are some hot spots, and folks have been spraying. One area you see quite a few is the north of Keel Lake, right to the end of the county there. Definitely a lot there, guys spraying. Sundial spots, like you go a mile here, a mile there. Airport area as well. So, yeah, definitely it's here and there for grasshoppers. And I'll get into a little bit more. We talked to Dan Johnson from the university on the subject as well. So, we did the bacterial ring rot in potatoes, and nothing found there. Canola surveys were done. These take some time, so we gather up all the material, and we work with Mike Harding out of Brooks, and he'll come and they'll look at that material and analyze it with lab in the winter, and we'll get those results. It's often in just before spring. Bertha Army worms, we carried that out. I have the numbers rising slightly here. Derek did this survey. He tells me it's the same or a little bit lower actually on those numbers in the end. That's a difficult survey because with canola, there's so many pests this year that guys were spraying for, or producers were spraying for, that you're wiping out the Bertha armyworm, like the amount of moss that we're finding in those traps. So we've had a lot of discussion regarding gophers, and strychnine is no longer available. When the gophers started to hit their peak, my phone started ringing, and guys are, what are we going to do? So we do have certain suggestions, and the biggest thing is producers have to get ahead of them. When it's March, that's end of March, that's when the time is you got to start thinking about controlling gophers, not in the middle of June. So we also had a private trapper each year that we looked to hire for trapping skunks for rabies detection. We focus again on this year on the south end of the county. If there's a rabies threat, we think it's coming, from the U.S. border side of things. So, Dutch elm disease. The folks that did our survey last year, they came in and did some training with the city of Lethbridge. So a couple of our staff went to the training, and it's good to know what Dutch elm looks like. I went to the training last year, and the amount of knowledge you gain from these folks is just incredible. They're working in Saskatchewan, and they see it every day. And with that said, we did pay for the contractor to come in and do a survey in the Monarch area, and they contacted the homeowners in Monarch or the acreage owners around and took a look for Dutch elm. I think it's a good awareness tool. We hope to not find Dutch elm, but we need producers to know what it looked like, or acreage owners to know what it looks like. So here at the end, we did consult with Dan Johnson. This is back to the grasshoppers. Dan works at the university now. He used to work for the provincial government. He was a pest specialist with grasshoppers. He is a world expert on grasshoppers. He has so much knowledge. We met with him in the city, and he was doing counts, crawling around, digging for eggs around the city because they didn't want the same problem that they had last year. And it was looking very bleak when it was dry. And then when we met Dan, it was raining, and he was going out, and they were reducing the grasshopper numbers, those rains, by 50%. So that's why I see such variables. When does the rain hit, it can really knock them back. So it was interesting to work with him. So our level of surface measures, we've met all of our survey level of service, and most of our pest work is done by now and in.
So I got a question here for you, Lauren.
Thanks. Just before you leave pests, is it possible to maybe have some sort of an education session on sawflies? Because the sawfly issue is just unbelievable. Like, people aren't following rotations, or I don't know what the problem is, but it is just terrible in certain areas.
We could work with the province there. That's a survey that we used to do for the province. They're carrying it out still. Dryland areas usually is where you're finding the sawfly. And I think what we could do is gather like the videos or the information they have and push it out on our social media, just like we have with trees and things like that. That would help. Just more information out there, or in our newsletter as well. And maybe if that's the hot topic of the day, that's something that we put in there. So that's doable for sure. Moving on to soil erosion. It seems like we talk about this for the last few years. Things really haven't changed since I talked to you in the spring. I've talked to a few more producers about cleaning the ditch where their land blew. It's been going very good. Everybody is very receptive. These are good farmers that this is happening to. Nobody's doing anything negligent. It's just rotations and seeding. And when you have a lot of land and the last you seed and then the wind blows, it can cause some problems. And we do not allow the farmer to do the work themselves unless they're are sort of like a contractor and do that type of work. We just don't want them changing the flow of the ditch and things like that. But it's been really good. People are phoning me and asking if they can do it. And we're trying to just scrape and not get into it, like not the grass or whatever, and everything's come back just perfect so far. And there's some contractors out there that really know what they're doing. Soil erosion, level of service targets, there's so many factors there. I didn't talk about soil erosion in here for 10 years. Now we're back talking about it every time, so we don't know what it's going to be. We investigate every soil erosion issue as best we can. When the whole world's blowing, it's difficult to be everywhere, and you're not singling out farmers when everybody's land's blowing. It's when it's a continual issue. So, moving on to roadside seeding, this is something we do in conjunction with Public Works. So whatever projects they're doing, we're seeding them for them. It was a very interesting spring. I did not want to seed anything. We waited, and then a couple of the projects that they finished, we did. They reclaimed the Rackus pit. We put on native grass seed in that area, and we did it very late. I wasn't going to just wait because I didn't think it would come up, and then it rained and it come up, and we were quite proud of our efforts. We call it like a golf course, but obviously it's not like that. But we got a good catch with that native seed, and it's important because the cost of seed is that seed is 4 times as much as the regular roadside mix that we have. So our seeded areas are doing good, but you get into a drought, it's difficult to grow grass. So that level of
talking about that seeding stuff. What is the cost of that spraying seed that you see going on all around? Is that really expensive? Is that something a county would look into, or not really?
We have a hydro seeder. So yeah, I'll tell you what we do with seeding. We are starting to prepare seed. We'll do some in the spring and some in the fall. Sometimes it works better just on the conditions, which is which. But the hydro seeder works very well in a wet year or a spring seed. When you get into a drought where things are quite dry now, you want the seed in the ground a bit. Just scratch a little bit with a disc, harrow it in. So we're doing both. We're putting it that way, and then when we seed in the fall, we're using we'll put on a little bit of seed with the hydro seeder and tackifier. So the tackifier holds it. We do not want to put this effort in and then have that grass seed blow away. And as far as cost, it's not as expensive. The machine is expensive, but once you have it, it's not too bad. But we will work in conjunction with we're corresponding with some of the big seed companies that are doing the same things we are, and on how we do and what they do. They're putting a lot more seed down than we are. We're doing it economically and still getting the catch. We aim to seed anywhere from, we used to be 17 pounds an acre. We're up to 25 to 30, and the reason we've upped it a bit is we've got an annual grass in there, just kind of acts as a cover. It's the first thing to pop, and then in the spring, and then it kind of covers the rest of the grass. It takes a little bit more time to get going, and we've got 4 different varieties we use in our mix. I get calls all the time on seed. Can I buy some of the county seed because it seems to grow anywhere? We do work with producers. If they're along the right of way, we'll sell them. We'll sell them a bag here and there. So, moving on, equipment rental, burn and drill rentals. Everybody was the same as us in the spring. Nobody wanted to seed grass. Wasn't getting used at all. When June hit, it started to rain, like we said. The phone started ringing, and people were probably seeding when they shouldn't have been in July, but they weren't going to seed it into drought to nothing. So it also picks up in the fall. $2,700 of revenue so far this year. Usually that's nearing the $4,000 mark. We anticipate there'd be a backlog of seeding if it ever rains. Plastic baler use, it didn't see any use. We didn't even move it. That's changing a little bit now here. Crops are better this year, so there's some bags going out there. There's also some very large feedlots that are putting their dry distillers in bags, and so it won't rot. And our machine is out right now, and it's getting used quite heavily. We've also been working with both Clean Farms and DBS Environmental. We went and took a look at how this machine for the silage plastic compacts, and DBS bought a trailer, and they wanted the county to move it around for them, but we rejected that idea. But what we're going to do is in the fall here, when they start using the bags again, we're going to coordinate maybe user groups. We're going to start with one dairy group, maybe they want the smaller guys, and show them how to do it. And then they can move this trailer amongst themselves, and then have even DBS come and pick up the plastic. Something to make it easy. DBS is great. They'll come and pick up if you got so many bags.
Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The compactor for the plastic, is that still the mechanical hand crank and such?
Yes, but when we went there and we took a look at this thing, and probably you're thinking the same thing I am, it's complicated and a little bit labor intense. DBS, they have designed one that uses hydraulics. Our idea was we'll get this thing on a trailer and we'll put some hydraulics and figure it out. They're ahead of us, which is good. I think it still has to evolve, and they have to get a little bit better system, I think. Make it for the plastic. This trailer will make it easier. They can store it, compact it, and then have it at their use, amongst, say, 6 or 7 farmers. We think that might work.
Yeah, if we had some sort of hydraulic, a little bit less labor intensive, I could see a higher usage of the people in the area.
Yeah.
Because the ones I've talked to, they look at it and say, I'm not gonna go crank a winch up and down 23 times to get a bale out of it. And so if we get something automated, it could go up a fair amount more, would be my guess. Yeah, so we were, when Matthew Wells, he does the environmental farm plans for the county, he's talking to the producers if they would use this, and can we get this going, and it's the same thing. I'm not going to do that. They're just not going to do that. So we have to find a ways to make it easier and better, and it will evolve. So there will come a day when you're forced to recycle plastic, I think. So
with that, I brought that up at the CARE conference that we had last spring, and about the usage of that. Just like Eric said, it's just an impossible piece of equipment that you got to use to do this. So would there be any appetite of somebody taking it on and doing it as a custom work? Because it's an awful lot of work, and that is the reason why it's not used as regularly as that it should be, because there's so many of the plastic just going straight in the landfill, and it could be done a lot better than that.
Yeah, as far as private contractor, I'm not sure that there would be the money there to be made. There's one MD that does that as a service. I don't believe they charge. Yeah, they do it as having employees around in the fall. It's up near Calgary, and they are right close to the recycling facility. The biggest thing with the plastic is how far away from trucking it to have it recycled. There's no money in it, so.
Gary, Mr. Chairman, just like he says, it'll be only a matter of time, and it'll be probably forced onto the people to dispose of the plastic in a good mannerly way.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot being burnt anymore, because when people see that big black fire, people start showing up, and they know that's not the right thing to do. I'm sure there's it is legal to bury it, which maybe that'll change too.
recycle them in our landfills. Now that's all going back to the distributors of that. At least they have a tool to essentially try and bale some of this plastic silage right now versus brand. So there'll be a progression. I expect a progression, just like other recycling programs.
Thanks, Les. I'm not, you probably might not be able to answer this, Gary, but maybe to Jeremy, and it might be more of a waste commission question. But as far as clean farms go, they're transitioning away from the municipal sites to retail. Do we have an indication? It looks like it's like a 3-year plan, 22, 23, 24. Do we have an indication when our transfer sites that we participate in will lose the clean farms collection?
Currently, and this will come up at the next Waste Commission meeting for both Councillor Klon. Anyway. So there is a phase out process for the jugs, for the chemical jugs, and we're going to see that exact same thing in our transfer sites. It is a 3-year phase out. The last site to accept them will be in 2024. I can't say specifically off the top of my head which site that is, but there is basically a general phase out because we've had that inquiry in some locations. I think it was Iron Springs. Somebody was asking about when will they not be able to bring their jugs back there. So there is a slow phase out, just like you alluded to. Yeah.
Thanks.
And I'm not sure I think they were trying to get rid of the busiest ones first. I'm not sure on that though. Picture Butte, I believe they're not accepting them there right now.
So where do the people go with their jugs and everything?
Where they buy them, wherever
So
wherever they purchase, they have to take them
they are
back.
responsible for taking them back.
Yeah,
Okay, and how's that going?
I don't know yet. We haven't had any feedback yet.
Okay.
And normally the spraying's done, and I think they got rid of their jugs this year, but it's going to be a problem next year. Well, they just not a problem. Just get used to taking it to a different spot.
I know a lot of them are going in BFI bins.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're going in the landfill. John?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think when it comes down to things like the plastic recycling and the compactors, and Jeremy alluded to it, is that, you know, there's a learning curve and there's always resistance, but one of the things about making resistance easier to get through that phase is convenience. You know, when we're dealing with a compactor that nobody wants to use because it's labor intensive, that's just going to really extend the problem. You know, if we can find a solution to make it more user friendly and easier for them to operate, they will be far more receptive to it and accepting of it, and then get us into a situation where we're not talking about it all the time.
Yeah, and the responsibility to make those changes falls with Clean Farms, and they're dealing with this every day, so changes are coming, I'm sure.
Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was, I think you pretty much answered the question with that. It's not our problem. We hope to help it a little bit, is that correct? But it's not the county or the Ag Services Board to take care of recycling in any manner?
That's right, we promote it, and it's good farming practices, and we bought a Kirchner bag roller here probably 10 years ago, and we will move that to the farmers, and that's our extent. We started accepting the plastic at Iron Springs, but now DBS is working with producers too. So yeah, we just want to promote. We don't want plastic bags blown all over the county either. So a little bit of coordination, but it falls under Clean Farms. They're paid to run these programs.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, moving on. Skunk, raccoon, magpie traps. There's incredible use. We stopped lending them out when the avian flu was at its peak. There was some concern not only with the birds and the magpie traps, but skunks could possibly pass this on. So we stopped everything, and maybe a month it was. So moving on, we'll go to parks. This has been ongoing. It's been a dry year. June was wet, and we mowed like crazy, and then it dried up. A lot of our effort has gone into watering trees that we've planted over the past 5 years. We've put in probably a couple hundred trees, and they're looking nice. We want to keep them alive. So that effort, we have a water truck that we use, and it can just go to each hamlet has its water fill station or whatever, and we'll just go there and put a couple loads on, keep them alive. Cemeteries, mowed and weed whipped twice. Not much to mow the second time. In 2022, our playground improvement was at Monarch, and this project went exceptionally well. Feedback from the residents has been very positive. We go out there and you're just bombarded with people coming up to you and telling you, thanking the county for putting this playground in place. Was raining one day and we had a guy out there. He was doing the inspection to see how everything was going. This lady drove right through the brand new seeded grass, made tracks about 6 inches deep, and she was just telling the guy how great the park was. And I got to tell you a couple more stories. So we're there and we're seeding the final seed. And there's a kid coming by every 3 minutes, waiting till we leave, circling with his bike, and a whole group of families. They're just waiting. They're staring at us. And then the school bell rings from the school that's adjacent to it, and the kids run over and took over. We had to leave. They didn't care if the seating was done or we needed to do anything. They were taking the playground over, and next thing you know, there's 30 kids. Every time I go to Monarch, there's kids playing on this playground. The money that the county has spent on playgrounds over the years is well received by residents, is the feedback I get. At the end of our presentation here, I'm going to go through each playground, a very brief PowerPoint to show you what we've done and where we intend to go with parks.
Do you want to segue to that right now?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Had a complaint come in on the officer around Monarch Playground. How can we deal with it, and does that happen more often?
It's not a big problem because most of our parks are dry. The issue is when you go have a bunch of Slurpees and you throw them in the garbage usually. So change the garbage bag and they're gone for a while. They'll take back off into someone's yard probably. Yeah, I think I had Derek go look in that. And I think that was a pretty simple one. So yeah, we can take care of them in other ways, but we don't like to either. So yeah. And maybe we'll pop that video up or the PowerPoint. Where's it at, Jeremy? Here.
Slideshow.
Yeah, it don't matter. How do I just click it? It'll go.
Just click and go.
Okay. All right. We're going to go through each park here. There's not many.
No, we're good. You're good, you got the right things now. Go.
Okay, we'll flow through our playgrounds here very quickly on what we have. So the first pictures here are pictures of the Shaughnessy playground that the county controls. There's a camp kitchen on this site and some washrooms. The picture on the upper left there is the main play equipment. The county went in here and gave a grant. I think it was probably 10 to 15 years ago. The equipment is not that functional. Since we started building playgrounds on our own, we found out what works. They had a playground across the street at the old school, and their play equipment was used way more than this stuff. Now that equipment at the school is becoming too old and it's going to be removed. Next year, our plan is to have an upgrade in Shaughnessy, and it is needed. That equipment there, rarely do I see kids on. All the other new ones, people playing on it all the time. The community group also put in the exercise equipment on the bottom left. I've never seen anybody exercise on that equipment. I have recommended they remove it, and we put in something functional. You can see the trees there on the bottom right that we've planted. Tennis court. The tennis court in Shaughnessy is in not good shape. The fence is done. It's leaning We keep it as safe as we can, and the surface is done too. So I've been working with the Shaughnessy Community Association for a project we're hoping for next year. They've filled out a grant application, and we have a big project planned. Depending on what grant we get, they get what they've applied for. But the county has in the budget, we put in, I believe it's $150,000 dollars. We're going to probably up that. The price of playground equipment has gone up in the last 5 years, 18 to 20%. I'm told it's going to go up again. Like everything, it's costing more. It's not, to put in quality equipment, it takes some money. They want pickleball on that tennis court combined with the basketball. We did that at Sunset Acres. A court went from no use to use. They're fighting over who gets to use it. So,
Who decides what kind of equipment comes onto the playground? Are there certain guidelines that you go by?
it depends. What we work with a playground equipment company in the county, and they have a guy that designs playgrounds, and he's really good at it. We will decide what age groups we're going after. The one in Monarch, the comments we're getting back is that there's something for everyone, from a 4-year-old kid to a 12-year-old kid. So we're trying to find a wide range here. It all depends on the money you have to spend, and this project is going to need a lot of funds to make that court usable. The court is going to be expensive with a fence too. We hope to achieve everything. If not, I have told them the county funds are going to be prioritized to play equipment for children. And then as we go, if there's more, then you can look at the pickleball and that sort of thing. So that's where we're going with Shaughnessy.
Anne, just got a question.
Will you be doing a public engagement session for Shaughnessy similar to the one you did in Monarch? Because I think, Gary, that was very successful.
Yes, it was successful. With Shaughnessy, I've met with them already. They had a meeting at the school. They invited me to present, and we took the playground company there as well. The most people I've ever seen show up. So the engagement is there, and we're leaving it up to the community association to help pick the equipment. Like, it worked very well in Monarch. They got what they wanted. Like, they had we had a design, and we put it out on social media, and everybody was putting their suggestions in. We changed it up very little. We put in 3 or 4 different things, but they got what they wanted, and they're happy. So yeah, there will be that engagement with Shaughnessy, and when we get the funds and we know what we got, then we're going to have to pick that equipment fairly quickly to get it ordered if we plan on that project this year. We're hoping everything can be done this year. The residents are very eager because they're going to take out that equipment at the school, and the kids are going to have nowhere to play. So,
Just for clarification, when you say this year, you mean 2020?
yes, yeah. 2023 is when we hope. But like in Monarch, it took another, we pushed it back. We couldn't get anything. And finally, I just stepped in and we had to make the project happen. And there was a little less community involvement on getting it done. We got it done, and it worked out very well. Everybody's happy. So Shaughnessy, it's coming. Diamond City, this is a playground we revitalized a few years ago as well. Upper left there. That's a fairly significant project as well, and this was working with the community association as well. Everything here is pretty good shape. The court's better than most. Lots of use here, and we put in the picnic tables here through our operating budget, and we continue to make those upgrades as well. The folks in Diamond City are happy with their playground, and they took ownership of it. It's not the county's park, it's their park. They picked it, and they watch out for everything. And moving on to Monarch, this is the project from this year. We're touching up the seating. We resurfaced the court on the bottom. The court was in fairly good shape. We put up new basketball standards. And we'll see if the video works here. I don't know if you guys have seen this online, but... All right, that was the video. Whoop.
There you go.
Yes, usable equipment. And what used to happen, the county was not putting in the funds. We were given funding for the playgrounds. Often it was 20 to 30,000 or whatever through the grant, and now we're going, it's $160,000 to revitalize some of these or more. It's a significant amount of money, but when they're done, I think we're good for 25 to 30 years in some of these spots. But I mean, residents will always ask for more because new is exciting.
How much of that money is grant money?
For the project in Monarch, that come through it was the county's grant money complete. It was a $160,000 project, and it come in probably just under budget.
I believe that came through the reserve fund that is when there's sale of municipal land, and then it goes into that. I believe that's where the money came from, but we'll find out for sure.
It comes from the grant, like in those municipal reserve, but when you start a subdivision and you have to put so much money in lieu if you're not putting in a green space. So, yeah.
In Ontario, it's called in lieu of parkland, but I'm not sure what it's called.
Yeah. And it's a little confusing because we changed the name of that one a few times over the years. So, and we went to just funding county stuff that's on county land. So the residents are really seeing the benefit from this. So, moving on, Mountain Meadows Trail. There's the trail system. There's 2 miles of this trail. Not a lot of effort. We've got to mow it every probably 3 weeks. It's dry there, but the top of the trail gets weeds. So we're spraying it. Lots of people are anti-spray out there, so we're, not doing a lot of that either. We're trying to mechanically do it as well. In the future years on the budget, you'll see there's going to be a coming year where we have trail enhancement. There's not a lot of shale left on that trail, and we're going to have to resurface it. I've purchased shale, and we've done small stretches where it's bad or washed. It can add up. And we've also got trail systems in a few other areas that are going to need to be looked at in a few years too. So Sunset Acres, this is another one we did recently. This is a park that went from no use to fighting over use. It's been great to see. If you look at the swing there on the left, that used to have one of them saucer swings on it. Yeah, we had it out there for a year. We were wearing out the bushings and bearings because the wind blows so hard. Finally, we give up. We couldn't do it anymore. It was dangerous when the kids were out there too. So we put the small seats on that, and it's used for the smaller kids. So a lot of the residents in Sunset Acres, there's a lot of city use. So they're seeing traffic that they haven't been seen before. The court is being used by kids playing basketball that some of the residents think is too late. We've put up a sign that says no activity after sunset, and now the days are getting shorter. The kids are staying out till still 9 o'clock.
Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On that park walkway, do you have a rough idea first of all, would there be an interest from the residents to consider pavement and cost benefit over shale? Is it double the money, 3 times the money? Like, is it just not practical to pave a walkway like that?
We did a walkway in Sunset Acres. I can't remember what the cost was, but with if you were doing 2 miles, it would get cost restrictive. I think you can surface it with, if not shale, there's limestone or other alternatives that are cheaper, and I think we can do it economically that way. And then if you're getting a paved trail, are you going to maintain it in the winter? I mean, the expectations might go up. There might be some icing issues if you're not keeping really good control of it.
So another one I got, it's you said you put signs up there that after sundown,
Yeah.
do not play on. Is that the county's responsibility?
I'm getting the phone calls and emails. I push them. It's basically the RCMP that will go look into that. There's a bylaw in place that when it's quiet time, this signage is going outside of that bylaw, it's making it tighter. May be difficult to enforce, but it's depending on how late it is and what's going on. I mean, they're not playing at 3 a.m. It's just after dark. And the residents are so close to this little park in the center, you can hear it. You can hear the bouncing in the backboard rate. So I think it'll be okay. Once everything goes back to normal with COVID, there'll be more use in the city. There's lots of kids coming out from the city and playing on this. But the pickleball, it's mostly local residents using it, and they have, they're playing there when it's not windy every day. It's seeing a lot of use. But they're trying to balance it, and I'm trying to make everybody happy. And the pickleball court stays up, and for now, if it ever becomes an issue, they'll have to put it up only when they're using it. So right now, everybody's playing nice. So, and also there's a trail that we put there.
I
You
got
can
another
see.
one here.
Sure.
John.
I was just gonna say, a lot of the issue that I've been getting from the people in Sunset Acres isn't necessarily the kids playing, it's more the young adults going there well after dark and causing significant disturbance, so.
Yeah, that's the ones that, it's not children playing late. It's the, 19, 20-year-olds on the basketball court is where the issue lies. And, young people, when I go check these parks, I'm checking the garbages to see what kind of use we're having. And, you're seeing lots of different things in there, alcohol-wise, so.
Lauren?
Just a question, is it lit? Like, can you see quite well at night or not?
It is not lit.
Oh.
So it's not going on much past dusk, but there's some people in there that they like to go to bed a little bit earlier, I think. They, depending if your shift work or what your day looks like. So it's not really that late, but it's still a disturbance to them. And we also got a complaint on that. The sign says after dark. And somebody says, does that dark mean in the morning too? Because someone's bringing a spotlight and playing pickleball. It's 5:30 in the morning. So, yeah.
Those are positive concerns.
Yeah.
People complaining about physical activity.
And the folks that we're talking to out there, they're good. They understand, it's difficult to make everyone happy, but I think they're doing all right. Fairview, this is a park we put in that swing a few years ago. The old one was just against the fence and not in a safe spot. That wooden picnic table is gone. We've added some tables to the back. This park does not actually see a lot of use, but it's good. It's in good shape. It's good for another, quite a few years. Broxburn Pond, this is another one that we maintain under our as a park, but it's got a trail system that goes around that's going to need some work as well. And of course, we've got those floating islands that we've been trying to clean the water up with there as well, and got some bubblers that are new this year too. So this one here and Shaughnessy are our only irrigated parks. These two take significant more effort, especially in a drought. We're trying to make them look nice, and this is hundreds of trees. It looks nice. So those are our parks, and down the road you're going to see us continue. We'll be caught up on every park after Shaughnessy. She'll look pretty decent. Then we're going to get into the maintenance of the trails down the road a few years, and then we'll also get into some of the little upgrades where some of the swings spotted around the county, Diamond City, just small stuff will be replaced, a bunch of those, and then we think we'll be set for a while. And then maybe that reserve can build up, and the next time that there's something larger that has to happen or a larger ask, we can accommodate. So,
Got Lauren here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So those floating boxes in the ponds,
Yeah.
are they working pretty good, or do you need both systems still?
what we've done this year, and I'm certainly not an expert on this, we had the big bubblers that were aerating the pond, and they were not cleaning the water good enough that it became, we were having to treat with chemical. We put fairly inexpensive bubbler system, so it just bubbles. The city has a bunch of these. The water, it keeps everything afloat. And these ponds around the county, I don't know if you've looked, they're pretty green. This one looks good. There's been no chemical treatment. The islands there, they say are cleaning it up. We're doing the test, but I think it takes more. We're going to add maybe a few more if budget allows this year, and that'll be about it. And we'll see how it goes. Olds College is big into promoting these through, what we're going to show is through tours, is maybe it's a form of feedlot runoff where they can treat this. Nobody likes the chemical going in, and then that chemical has to go out somewhere into the environment. So that's kind of the way the world is going, and we've put up this sign on the right that explains that process. So if we have a future ag tour, it will be a stop. They've become very established. They're doing good. So we've also added some cattails and bulrush on the side. That's the most efficient way to clean water. And very hard to get the cattails going, but the bulrushes are taking hold. So this is a drainage pond. There's, first of all, and then a nice green space second, I think. So, and that would be all the parks and where we're going. Give me back to
Okay.
Escape on keyboard.
All right, we'll continue on. Some of the other stuff we've had is the Farm Safety Center contribution, $5,000 per year. Farm Family, Van den Elzen family. I believe Reeve Campbell attended that event in Calgary. Was it a good event? And
Yeah, no, they did a very nice job. It was well attended. It was really cool to kind of hear everyone else's story throughout the province. Like a lot of really well established farms, like a lot of fifth generation farms that have been passed down, and cool to hear the stories of, not necessarily doing maybe things that we would think, right? The one farm, I believe it was Wheatland possibly, but they owned a record company and a podcasting company, and their kids that started this, they were making clothing and everything like that, and so it's just kind of cool to hear how it had all evolved. But yeah, no, a really nice event, and I know Mary Van den Elzen was very, very appreciative, wanted me to share that with the group, that just for them being first generation Canadians and first generation farmers here, she thought it was really cool to kind of be included in that group. I think it was pretty special to them. So, no, a nice way to acknowledge farmers from across the province. Really well done.
yeah, and very deserving family. They have a really good energy for agriculture, and they like what they're doing, and they're very busy.
Do you have any idea how many awards were given out for that?
Yeah, I couldn't
Lots?
tell you, but yeah, it was. Yeah.
Okay, lots, okay.
A majority of rural municipalities, I think, had someone represented. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a southern Alberta one for the Calgary. I think they have a northern Alberta one for
Yep.
Edmonton. So, moving on, we did have that farmer pesticide course, as I mentioned last meeting, 25 participants. South Region Conference, that's going to be in the Crowsnest Pass in October. I do have a date for that. Just come in. It's going to be October 25th, Tuesday, and it'll be at the Crowsnest Pass Golf Course. I think they have a pretty nice facility there. The Ag Service Board Conference, that's going to be in January in Grand Prairie, and a little bit earlier than normal, the 17th to 20th. Moving on to Resource Management Stream. This is where Matthew Wells, he helps with our extension here. I'm going to just go quickly through his activities and focus maybe on some of the larger ones. Newsletter. Our newsletter is being well received. We're trying to keep it fresh. We brainstorm all the time on what to put in there, and Matthew makes it happen. We're going to have an ag tour here with the college and the university probably in October. It's been pushed back a bit. The floating islands, that'll be part of the tour. We're going to show the students those as well. We're liking that if we don't have to treat, it's cost effective. Just what we've done so far is saving us money. But will it turn green and bad again? Well, we'll see how they work. But we'll have to try on something new. Presentations to students. Matthew presented at one school. He's contacted several of the school divisions, and we're meeting with Iron Springs, and we're planning on doing some ag extension in school on showing kids not only what we do, but what agriculture is all about, and maybe even focusing in a little bit on safety and taking some of our equipment out there and showing them as well. Raptor posts, we did have a deal with Forest. They're going to come put one up. They backed out. We would like to still go down this road just to show another way of rodent control, and we'll either maybe put up one ourselves if we can do it cost effectively. As well, Clean Farms, like you say, we're going to hold a demo. We haven't had the demo yet. Once we get it all squared away, we thought we were going to do this now. Well, it's too busy. The farmers this is a November, December thing, a winter type thing. So informing the public, of course, we're putting what's that weed, what's that bug. I don't know how well received, but we're putting it out there, and we like seeing them. The biggest component here is the environmental farm plan. Matthew has helped over 20 producers with environmental farm plans thus far this year. We are generally the busiest county in Alberta for supplying these. Dairy producers have it in their bylaws, I believe, that they must have an environmental farm plan. Everybody waits to the last minute, and they're panicked on getting these things done. The province is often trying to push environmental farm plans from other areas that don't. There's nobody to do environmental farm plans in southern Alberta except Matthew right now. We only do environmental farm plans if you live or own land in the county. He's very busy with that. CAP funding, anything that comes through where farmers have an opportunity to get some funding, we'll push that out. The bill drops, Matthew, we put in charge of that. He's working with the folks along the riparian areas. Leafy spurge video, we're going to hear that from Alberta Invasive Species Council. Tree information, we get a lot of tree calls, disease, and we don't have a tree expert. We know enough to be dangerous. So we've teamed up with Lindsay Bell would help us out from the city, and he's got his own job. So we kind of contracted with Grant Calling. He's from Grant's Plants, and he was the local expert. When I asked who we needed to train on chainsaws and trees, everybody's just said, just call Grant. So we did a video on shelter belts with Grant and Lindsay from the city. Very well received. We're going to be working more with Grant. He's good to us. I called him yesterday on a tree disease, and he helps us, and we may be enhancing that a little bit. A lot of tree calls I get every year, and we'll push them to the private contractor, but if we can help somewhat, I think it's valuable. Matt's also going to have an Old Man River Mainstream Watershed Group meeting coming up in next month, or this month it'll be. He does crop reporting and also agroclimatic on weather reporting. And the water sites, we put out the off-stream water. The off-stream water didn't go out this year because the pasture was not used along the Little Bow. They let it rest, and I think it's probably was a good choice. So in the resource management stream, we're meeting most of our targets. We got our full grant money. They understand that you can't do full extension during COVID. Our rules at the county are fairly reasonable. We can go meet. When you're talking with the province, they just won't let their folks attend. So until things open up completely for everyone, we're not gonna have those big tours, I don't think, and we want to have them. Hopefully next year we can have a tour of producers and council as well. So, and that is my report.
Are there any questions for Gary? Tori?
No, but just a acknowledgement. I know it's there. I think maybe the average citizen doesn't understand all that falls under your umbrella. So I think you guys do a really good job of communicating that. I'm a big fan of Matthew's newsletter. I think the ASB newsletter getting out there, I think it's great. I think it'll be exciting to go, like you said, get back into tours. I think those were a great opportunity. But just overall, yeah, and as a producer at the same time too, just an acknowledgement. I know it's challenging and trying to get ahead of kochia, Canada thistle, brownleaf mallow, whatever it is, you know, when it takes hold in an area, it's challenging. So I appreciate and as you acknowledged, it's not just people growing wheat and barley anymore. You know, out in our neck of the woods, there isn't a section that doesn't have at least a quarter section of a specialty crop of pea, canola, flax, mustard, you name it. So acknowledge the challenges you have, but also I think there's some good work being done. I know the mowing was exceptional out in our neck of the woods, and that road top, you know, we didn't have the in-ditch spraying, I don't believe it might have been spot, but not to the great extent in our area, but that road top is huge. You know, you see early in the year on the lesser used roads that don't get, you know, obviously don't get graded as frequently, there's a potential for that to come in, and then, like you said, once it activated, you all of a sudden saw the effects of that. So I think it goes a long way. Trying to keep pace and stay ahead is challenging, but I think we're doing a good job, and just a hats off to everyone in your department, because it's what people see. You know, it's the parks, it's the roadways, it's all that. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
And thank you, Dory, for those good words. I'd like to thank Gary and Jeremy for, especially Gary, of course, for all the hard work that's been put into this one. And I think that it was great presentation here, and it seems like Dory said, it's a lot of hard work that you guys do, and the extent to it is great. So could I have a mover here to accept this as information? Okay, Eric moves this, the report from Gary for information, the Agricultural Service report. Everybody in favor? That's carried. All right, shall we take a 5-minute break? So, start with our meeting again, and the next one up is agriculture terms of reference. And that would be Jeremy probably one of them.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Vanderveen. I got the names right this time.
You were struggling, weren't you?
I did that pause, and I was like, I almost called you Clausen, so I was like, because I was like almost slurring through the words a little bit there. Anyway, so I'm here to present today in regards to a bylaw and terms of reference. So after an administrative review, it was discovered that the ASB committee, which is one of the committees of council, was not operating under an approved bylaw. As much as we searched through our records, we could not find essentially where the previous bylaw was. So today I'll be presenting, and if you've read through the information, there is a new bylaw in here. Part of that as well was a direction from council that we were going to move the ASB committee to a member of 4 councilors and then 3 members at large from the public, and that's what's indicated within the bylaw as well as referenced in the terms of reference. Now there is, I mean, I will, when I get to the terms of reference, there is one amendment I want to recommend as far as what is in there right now. CEO Mitchell and I went over a couple little details that just cleaned it up a little bit more and made it a little bit more succinct. So anyway, the Ag Service Board has created a bylaw and revised terms of reference for the ASB committee. Per the MGA Section 146, composition of councils and boards, and in conjunction with the ASB Act, Sections 2 and 3, for the rules and establishment of an ASB committee, which specifies the formation of this committee accordingly. The bylaws and terms of reference will clearly identify the ASB committee's role and how it's to be structured and function. Policy recommendations from internal committees, in this case the ASB, are forwarded to regular meetings of council for approval. So at this point, you can approve the bylaw, but you can't approve, but that bylaw has to be forwarded essentially to council because it has to be ratified within a regular council meeting. So then you would see this essentially at the September 15th meeting, so next week. So very similar. Reasons for the recommendation. So the bylaw, I mean, every committee of council should be essentially formed under the form of a bylaw. The ASB board has been a long-standing committee of council, and this would just continue and make sure that it's in conjunction with legislation moving forward. And the terms of reference provides council with that template that clearly defines the structure and role of the ASB going ahead. And I touched on the members at large. That was a direction of council. I mean, obviously, if the ASB committee makes a different recommendation, then we change the bylaw essentially accordingly for that purpose. Now, with the voting members still stay as members of council, that being the one specific. So I think it's the chairman is the alternate vote, and then I believe councilors Hickey and Zeenstra are the 2 voting members right now.
And that's gonna remain the same for this year. This is,
Yeah. So at the organizational meeting we have in October, then at that point, that portion could change accordingly, who those voting members essentially are. And those are the provincial voting members as per, they're going to like the October meetings into the regular conference and voting on different provincial resolutions.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just so, point of clarification, when we're talking about if we move forward and restructure this for 4 members of council and 3 members at large, then anybody that would be on the provincial voting would still have to be a councillor then, not a member at large.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yes, the voting members stay with council.
Lauren?
Can you repeat that? I don't quite get that. You mean that only the 4 members of council would have voting rights at the ABS? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so at the organizational meeting, members of, at the next organizational meeting, the 4 members for the ASB committee would be nominated by council. 2 of those members from the 4 of council would have to be the voting members.
it would be the chair and the vice chair probably, is how that would work.
It's typically how it's been
Yeah.
previously.
Not a lot's gonna change on that, but I think what we're suggesting is that the voting members wouldn't be the members at large.
Yeah,
Wouldn't be.
Okay.
wouldn't be.
Lauren?
So just to follow up for that, is there a particular reason why they wouldn't be?
No, no particular reason, just typically these are elected members of council and those are the consistent members within the ASB committee.
What are the procedures, or do you have any idea what happens in other jurisdictions?
So this bylaw is actually modeled after Willow Creek. Willow Creek brought in that where they have four members of council or part of the committee and then 3 members at large. And it follows that similar format to them. And that was in reference to some other committees of the ASB across the province that basically had that same kind of configuration.
Lauren?
So that just to follow up, I'm not follow up to that, but it says here, we talked about the vice chair will be elected by the committee. What about the chair? Is that by council? Like,
If I understand it correctly, that is done at the organizational meeting.
It'd be the same,
Correct.
yeah.
It is at the organizational meeting, the chair is designated.
so then could a member at large be the vice chair? Because now you kind of said that the vice chair, voting council could be the voting members. So I'm just kind of, this is getting a little confusing, I guess.
Mhm.
So is
Well-
the vice chair gonna be a member of council then? Because if you're gonna have the voting members be the chair and the vice chair,
They both, yeah.
Both
they-
need to
they-
be members.
I don't think it has to be, but that's what we're suggesting here.
John?
Is there anything in the MGA or legislation regarding the Agriculture Services Board that prohibits members at large being voting? Or is this just a suggestion of how we should be running things?
This is just a suggestion of how we should run it based on previous other ASBs been informed in this kind of sense.
Ann?
Councillor Hickey brought up some good points, and I think that, I don't know if we do it today or at next week's council meeting, but it is, if we're trying to bring in members of the public and make them involved and part of the Ag Service Board, then do we really want to limit their ability? So I guess that's a question we have to sort out. Is that what you were trying to state?
more or less.
Yeah.
Because it's, if you're asking people to be participatory, and you limit what you can do, I guess
And
it's hard to get people that.
And I think the other piece too is if you're like a committee outside of this council, right? And it's your own entity of that committee, then shouldn't it function where they are allowed to appoint their own chair and appoint their own vice chair, right? Did I capture that, Lauren?
I would say that would be more accurate. In fact, we've always chose it because we're always been members of all council. So it really didn't matter how you chose it.
Yeah.
Now you're switching things, I'm not too sure it's very good public perception.
Yeah, it might be better just to leave it open, to have it, whoever they choose to vote in, right? Just, I think with being a new committee, it would be valuable to have the experience of somebody that's seen how Ag Service Boards function.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
This can be adjusted, I mean, like any bylaw, I mean, we can change the bylaw at whatever point down the road. I mean, I think the main part of the bylaw though is, I mean, the public are still voting members, but they're voting members of the committee. Right? And then you just separate the voting members of the committee versus the provincial ASB portion.
yeah,
I think that does make sense, the way you put it, your last comment, that, that they can, of course they're voting members on the committee, but like on the provincial scene, maybe it would be wiser to have a council meeting, because you are voted in by the membership, or I mean by their taxpayers, so you have that responsibility. Yes, Ann?
Just to play devil's advocate a little bit, all of the ASB resolutions come forward to council. So in essence, council will have a say on whether to forward those or not. So if the committee does something, it will come forward to a regular meeting of council. Just to throw some more confusion.
So what you're saying is we can discuss this further at council meeting?
To be continued.
To be continued?
Thank you for that, Ann. So, seeing that we have an 11 o'clock appointment here with Megan Evans, are we ready to make a recommendation here to council? Yes, Lauren?
I'm in favor of making a recommendation, I just think it needs a little tune-up a little bit.
Okay, so I will give you here the Agriculture Service Board members a couple of minutes, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, to rethink this whole thing, and then we'll continue the discussion after we had the presentation from Megan Evans.
That's a good idea, yep.
Okay, so we'll put that one on the table, I guess, and we'll move on to our next 11 o'clock appointment.
Can I plug this in? Thanks. We're gonna take your spot, eh? Okay. There's all kinds of stuff on there. Okay. Nope, that's not mine. There it is. Perfect, okay. Should I sit or stand?
No.
Sit.
Okay.
Okay, I can
I would
sit.
like to welcome Megan Evans to the meeting, and she's going to have a presentation here for us. And do you know most member of council?
I don't think so. No,
Okay.
we've met in Edmonton.
Yes,
Yeah,
we did.
I recall.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go around the table. We'll
Sure.
start at by Mark there.
Hi, Mark Sayers, Division 3.
Hi, I'm John Purvis, Division 4.
Hi, John.
Hi, Tori Campbell, Division 2.
Hi, Tori.
Eric Van Essen, Division 5. Lauren Hickey, Division 1.
Hello.
Morris Easton, Division 7, right?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Thank you. And you know our staff here, don't you?
I think except for me, Ann Mitchell, CAO.
Hi.
Nice
Oh,
to meet you.
okay. Sorry about that.
Hi, nice to
Yeah.
meet you. Yeah, hi. Have we met?
Jeremy.
Jeremy, yeah, good to meet you. Great, okay.
All right,
All right,
Megan, the
well-
floor is yours.
Thanks so much. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. It's always great to, I haven't done a lot of in-person anything in a while, so it's a real treat to kind of be here with you all in person today. So I'm Megan, and I'm with the Alberta Invasive Species Council, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about kind of who we are in just a moment. So really quickly, how much time would you like me to spend here? 20, you said?
That'll work.
Okay, 20.
Stay to 5, isn't that what you said?
Hey, I wasn't done counting yet.
Okay, you can haul me off whenever you need to, but I'll keep it keep it low. So we'll quickly talk about the Invasive Species Council, what we do, how long we've been around, and then I'm going to highlight just a few of the projects and the programs that we've been working on over the last couple of years. Those include the new Invasive Plants of Alberta Guide, the EDMAPS, Invasive Species Reporting Apps, biocontrol releases and research, as well as our Squeal on Pigs campaign, which I don't have on this slide. So that's what we'll finish off with today. So the Invasive Species Council, we are a nonprofit organization, and we were established in 2006. So we've been around for a little while. And we have a large board of directors, and it's mandated through our bylaws that our board of directors come from a variety of sectors, and that makes us a really strong organization with a lot of perspectives and backgrounds. And it means I have a lot of bosses, too. I'm sure you must know what that's like, everyone here, right? So we have 2 staff, and of course, as a nonprofit, we kind of ride that funding roller coaster and, do casinos, grant applications, and we bring in revenue through things like releasing biocontrol agents as well. So this is a council and Ag Service Board, is that correct? So do you one and the same? Is that, okay, perfect. So you guys have a general idea. You guys are probably tuned in to invasive species issues to some degree. So to sum it up, the reason why invasive species matter is because they pose a huge risk to both our environment and our economy. So they're considered to be the second biggest threat to biodiversity in the world. So the second biggest threat after habitat loss. So that's like a really profound statement, right? Like these things pose a major risk to just general biodiversity. And they're estimated to cost Albertans $1 billion a year And that's primarily in cost to rangeland weeds, control costs, and that sort of thing. But that's a 2004 estimate. So as you can imagine, that number would be much higher in today's dollars. So invasive species really matter. They matter to our environment, to our economy, to our livelihoods as well. And it's also really important to note that they come in all different forms. So we all know that we have weeds, right? We're no strangers to those. So we've got invasive plant species. We also have aquatic invasive plant species like flowering rush and yellow flag iris. We have invasive fish like Prussian carp and goldfish and crayfish and any number of things that keep popping up. We're always on alert for invasive mussels, of course. Alberta is still zebra and quagga mussel free, and we hope to remain that way, although the jurisdictions that can claim that status are declining rapidly. We also have invasive diseases like whirling disease. We have invasive insects like gypsy moth, invasive fungus like this white bark pine blister rust on this endangered white bark pine tree. And of course, we have invasive animals like pigs. So they're coming at us from every direction, and they come in all different forms, and we need to remain diligent. So we've developed a number of resources to address all of these different invasive species. So we revamped our website early last year, and on our website you'll find over 150 different invasive species fact sheets with associated photo galleries, really important resources, especially to junior staff or people just learning about this topic. We have 7 different education and outreach campaigns, including our Don't Let It Loose campaign, and I'll touch on that just here in a moment. We have our annual conference that comes up every year. This year it will be an in-person event, which is very exciting, March 7th and 8th, 2023 at Olds College. We always offer professional development credits in addition to tons of information. It's a great way to stay up to date on the latest invasive species issues. We have quarterly newsletters, free online webinars. We had one last night. We have the 2 invasive species reporting apps. We coordinate the Alberta Certified Weed-Free Forage Program, which is an important prevention pathway of invasive plant species through contaminated forage. And we just underwent a major revision to the Invasive Plants of Alberta Guide, and we offer biocontrol releases. So I'll go into a little bit of detail about some of these. Oh, but I forgot I put this in. So this is very exciting. So we received a grant from the Alberta Conservation Association for about $20,000 to promote the Don't Let It Loose messaging. So Don't Let It Loose is really aimed at creating awareness and preventing the spread of invasive species through intentional release. Like people are taking fish bowls and dumping contents into water bodies, which has resulted in over 100 confirmed infestations of goldfish across the province. So, and every single one of those totally intentional. So this is a major awareness issue, right? Like we need to let people know that this is not an appropriate way to dispose of your unwanted pets. So we are developing a mascot. This is him. This is his prototype. I'm not sure what you call this. We just got the design, so he's in the works right now. And we announced last night that we have a naming contest. So I don't know if any of you are interested, but you can scan that QR code and enter the naming contest. So exciting things happening. And again, we need to be fun and clever. We need to get people engaged and let them know that these things matter. So we don't want people dumping their goldfish and other aquatic stuff. So, Invasive Plants of Alberta. So this is a really, really useful resource that's been widely used throughout Alberta. It was originally developed by Wheatland County. They did an amazing job in putting this guide together. We worked with them to create, I believe this was the 4th edition. We updated that cover. So we did a major overhaul of this guide. We have taken over distribution of the guide. And we secured $45,000 in grant funds to print the guide at a highly subsidized rate. So I know that Gary's already got a couple cases, which is really exciting. So we work with all the counties to help distribute these resources. But just a couple of highlights. We added some icons and graphics. We wanted to make this more inviting to people with no plant background, no invasive species background. And so we added these icons that indicate habitat preferences, and also I think what was really important was these species prevalence maps. So they're very coarse scale, but they give you a general idea. Like, are we dealing with something that's never been seen here before, or are we dealing with something that's widely abundant? So I think that was really critical addition to this guide. And so this is what the pages look like. We're really excited to have this out. Lots of things to help folks with the identifications, including bolding of key characteristics and things like that. So those are available as PDF on our website, and of course we've got print copies as well. So moving right along, because we don't have much time, so we'll move right along here. So Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about our biocontrol program. So this is a program that's been around for about 20 years and was originally established by Agriculture Canada and a number of South Region fieldmen, where you are probably involved. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, and instrumental to getting this off the ground. And so this is critical. So we need both the research side of things to research the new agents or insects, and we also need counties, and we need people on the ground to move these bugs around so that the bugs can do the work and, work on harming and destroying the weeds, basically. So AISC is a relatively new player in this program. We've kind of been more involved in the last couple of years, but we're now offering releases of agents or insects that target these 5 specific weed species on the screen. So that's leafy spurge, spotted and diffuse knapweed, Russian knapweed, and Dalmatian toadflax. Yes.
There's a lot of information coming out here. Is it okay if council asks you a question?
Oh, yes.
In between? Yeah.
Yeah,
okay. Thank you.
absolutely. Jump in at any time with any questions. So we have insects available to control those species right now, and it's a really good, environmentally friendly way of addressing weed species, especially in environmentally sensitive areas like riparian areas and that sort of thing. We do offer this at a cost recovery, which is important to note because it costs a lot of money to get out there and move these things around. So we mentioned before, there's the research side of things as well, and we are engaged and involved in the research end of the biocontrol work as well. So we have received 2 rounds of funding for a total of $200,000 to fund research for a common tansy biocontrol agent. Do you guys have a bit of tansy in Lethbridge County?
We have very little.
Oh, you do? You must be an island in Alberta with little. You are lucky. So this is a very abundant species. I live in the Crowsnest Pass, and we have quite a problem with it there, and as well as in many other parts of the province. So this is a species that is a great candidate for a biocontrol agent. It's everywhere. We need help controlling it. So we've already initiated the majority of the research. We've worked with Agriculture Canada and researchers in Cabby in Switzerland to identify insects that feed only on common tansy. So they go back to I think they're looking in Europe, and they find insects that only feed on common tansy. And then they have to go through all kinds of testing and research to make sure that when we bring it over, it's not going to go feed on our native plants or crops and cause damage that we don't intend it to, right? So there's a robust research process and approval process, and it takes well over 10 years and a lot of money to get these agents approved and available. So we just submitted a third application for another $100,000 for a 3-year grant that we'll find out about in early 2023. But we are at the stage now where at the Lethbridge Research Center, they have the bugs that have been shipped over from Europe. They're trying to rear them, and we're going to look at some preliminary releases in the next couple of years. Yeah.
Do you have anything for kosher weed?
No, we don't. But good question.
Okay, we've got a question here for you, Lauren.
So do these bugs, are they able to overwinter, or?
Yeah. They are, yeah. So that's part of the battle, right? We need them. If we have to rear them in a lab or something like that, it's really not feasible because it just costs so much. So we need to identify agents that we can bring over here that will only feed on the target plant species, but that can survive our winters. And of course, in a province like Alberta, where we have, climatic conditions in Medicine Hat, which are vastly different from Crowsnest Pass, or different from Fort McMurray, we see regional differences in success rates as well because of that, for sure. But that's absolutely part of it. So what we have for the agents that we currently release in the province, we have what we call nursery sites. So that's a site where we released agents, 4 or 5 years ago, and in a big infestation, and then they just go crazy. They go into like an outbreak mode, but they still only feed on the target plant. But when their populations go boom like that, we can go harvest them and then relocate them to other areas. So that's how we do. And we actually work quite closely with Gary and his team on that because we've got lots of sites down here. So yeah, it's a great question. But they have to be self-sustaining, essentially. Yeah. So this is really exciting stuff. And oxeye daisy is another plant species that we have some stuff in the works coming down the line as well. So it's pretty exciting. Are there any other questions about biocontrol agents? No kochia. I'll add that to the list. That would be a good one, though, for sure.
Right at the top.
Yes, at the top of the list. Absolutely. So we also have two apps, And now, I'll be the first one to admit they have a terrible name. It's not catchy, it's not fun. You're not even sure what you say when you call them EDMAPs, So they are descriptive, though. So EDMAPS stands for Early Detection and Distribution Mapping System. So it is a descriptive name. And so we have both a citizen science version where we encourage members of the public to go in, if they see something, they can submit a photo, and the GPS location is attached to it. They send it in. We verify the report, and it gets submitted into a provincial distribution map, which is publicly available. We also have a professional version of this app that was designed in the States for county weed managers. So it's designed for state, county weed managers to map out their invasive species and to monitor and that sort of thing. So those data are also submitted into a publicly available distribution maps unless they are otherwise marked private. But the most underutilized aspect of the app, and the reason why I'm bringing this up today, is that anybody can access this database at any time. So last night I queried all of the data for Lethbridge County, and it literally takes 2 seconds. You go to edmaps.org, and away you go. And this is what came up. So if you scan in this QR code, it'll bring you to that map, which you can zoom in or out on, and you can click on an individual point. You can look at the photos that are associated with it. You can look at all of the data. You can also share a link to this map to any query of all of the Alberta EDMAPS data. And you can also download those data in an Excel spreadsheet, an ArcMap file, or a Google Earth file. So no matter what you're working with, you can download a file that can kind of plug into your system. So that can be really handy because then you can just send a link to somebody and show, this is what we did in 2022, or this is all the knapweed in our location, or this is all the kochia in Lethbridge County, or whatnot, right? So this is a hugely underutilized aspect of this app. So I would say Lethbridge County is not a hotspot for EDMAPS use because we don't have a ton of reports right now. But with every report that's submitted to this database, the value of it grows, and there's so much potential here for utilizing these data, which are just so easy to access. So
could we not help you get that out through our website?
yeah, absolutely. If that's something you guys are interested in.
We are.
And I think it's a two-way street too. Like we've been trying to pitch to some of the counties, like, let's say there's like 3 weed species that are right on your doorstep, but you're not sure they're here yet. You could put the word out, say these are our top 3. If you see this, we want to know about it, and really put that call to action out there to the general public. And then we'll work with you to send those reports immediately to you guys that go into the database. Yeah. You can also use this. You see some of these points are blue on here, which is kind of weird, but that means a negative report. So you can utilize this for monitoring as well. And those negative reports, you'll be glad to know, are all locations that have been monitored for zebra mussels. So they're all blue. That is a good sign because we do not want them in there. And I'll leave that up for another second. I hope that QR code works. QR codes are new to me. So it does? Okay, it's a miracle. Yeah, so you can play around with that, and I can send you the link and show you how to query data, but it's a really powerful tool, and every year it becomes more powerful as we add data to that. So yeah, absolutely. So those are our EDMAPS apps. There's a lot happening there, big chunk of stuff. I'm going to be quick now. Okay, this so this is, we'll wrap things up talking about pigs. This is a hot topic in Alberta right now. We don't have any pigs down here that I'm aware of. Our hot spots in Alberta are kind of
different pigs.
We have different. That's what I should specify. We don't have any wild boar at large down here in this area, but central Alberta we do have some pretty major problems. So AISC launched Squeal on Pigs in 2020 in an effort to address this. I guess in 2021. So a little bit of background here. So we brought these animals over in the 80s, and we said, "Hey farmers, here's a great idea. You should farm these wild boar." And in fact, we didn't give them just straight wild boar. We bred domestic hogs with European wild boar, Eurasian wild boar, and that resulted in an animal with all of the smarts of a wild animal and the domestic or the reproductive capacity of a domestic livestock species, right? So this is we've been fueling this fire. So they have a lot of characteristics that make them kind of like a textbook or ideal invasive species. So major reproductive capacity here. So gestation period of 115 days. And they can have an average of 6 piglets per litter. So that's an average of 12 to 18 piglets per year. So you don't have to be good at math to know what that curve looks like, right, if you let that go, right? It's not like we're talking about a deer that has 1 or 2 offspring per year. We're not going to hunt our way out of this. This is exponential population growth. These animals will eat literally anything. They have no real predators on the Canadian prairies, and they can disperse over massively large distances in short periods of time. And they're very smart and elusive, and we'll kind of come back to that. So we're very challenging species to deal with. And as an aside, you know, wild boar were introduced to Texas in the 1930s for sport hunting, right? And that created a disaster. So, you know, and we've been sitting here watching it, and we still did this. So introduced to Texas in the 1930s, since then they spread to 35 of the United States, and their population estimates are at 6 million individuals. And yet we still were like, hey, it's a great idea, we should introduce these to Canada. What could go wrong, you know? So, you know, people argued initially that they couldn't survive the winters, you know, all these sorts of things. Well, guess what? They are doing just fine. So I've got a video here. Some of you would have seen this.
Oh, this one here in the corner.
This was taken in Saskatchewan. And this shows you what we're up against. There's not a lot of crops still standing there. You see some little piglets running around. But,
See, there they come.
Oh, my goodness.
and that's not all of them. So at this point, these animals run into the river valley and they're gone. And if each one of those pigs has 6 piglets per litter and they're constantly reproducing, right? This is a major, So this is a major problem, and a lot of the times, like, farmers don't even know they have a problem with them until they get into harvest and they start seeing the trampling damage and things like that, right? So they're just super smart, super elusive, and a major problem. So that's the video again. So impacts, again, considered to be one of the most destructive invasive species on the planet. Estimated costs are about $2.5 billion a year in the U.S. And we talk about issues associated with disease transmission to livestock, which I'll touch on in a second. But that $2.5 billion, that's mainly attributed to damage to crops. So, you know, it's not just livestock producers that should be worried about this. You know, our crop producers should be worried as well. They get into crops and golf courses. They destroy riparian areas and contaminate water bodies. They'll feed on stored livestock feed, predate young livestock. They get into grassland nesting bird habitat. But the major risk associated with these animals is the spread of diseases. So they can host up to 87 different diseases that can be spread to humans, livestock, or wildlife. And of course, some of those are reportable diseases like African swine fever or foot and mouth disease. And we all know how serious those are. So we have our industry partners that are very tuned into this issue and aware. Current situation, this is current as of January 2021. So these are showing occurrence data, and a county shows up pink or red if it has had any occurrences. But this is what we're dealing with. However, the data, like Saskatchewan is on fire right now. So the Canadian prairies are the hotspot within Canada, and within that, Saskatchewan has a majority of pigs. So this is what we're dealing with in Alberta. Wild boar are considered a pest in the province only when they are at large. So there is still no provincial prohibition on new wild boar farms in the province, which is a big gap in my opinion. So there are some municipalities that have enacted regional bylaws that prohibit new wild boar farms, but there's no provincial prohibition. And for a while there, the only action that was being taken was a provincial bounty program. It was in place for 9 years, resulted in about 1,000 confirmed kills over that time, and still breeding populations of wild boar on the prairies and in Alberta. So I'm going to skip the next one and talk about this. So talk about the hunting aspect. I know that this has been a hot topic this year as well, but we know that these animals are notoriously difficult to hunt. Even though I get calls from hunters, you know, every other day telling me they will come look after our wild boar problem, but hasn't happened to date. So what happens is you saw them, they live in groups, right? So like in that field, you go pick off 1 or 2 individuals of the group. The remaining pigs learn to avoid being hunted and trapped in the future. They hear a truck door slam, they're gone. So it makes them more challenging to manage. And we know this because we have anecdotal evidence that shows, you know, from our trappers that there's a noticeable reduction in wild pig observations during hunting season and stuff. They just know they're on higher alert and they'll go to areas that are safer. So hunting is just simply not effective against the exponential population growth that we're dealing with right now. So we don't recommend hunting as a control option. Even though the province just announced a new bounty program last spring, I'm sure you guys chatted about it lots. And ultimately, it was a 1-year pilot program that will come to an end this spring. There was 3 municipalities that signed up for it, and 0 bounties claimed. So again, it's not that program, as you know, as it were, it was not super effective. So our focus is on eradication, and we have really good things happening. Yes, yeah.
Meg, Yeah, because I remember, well, at the Congress that we had there, that was, it was a big topic there, and people were getting actually really fired up.
They were,
With,
weren't
yeah, you think I'm gonna leave my gun alone when I'm in my truck, or if I'm in my tractor, it's coming along.
Yeah.
But they don't know how very ineffective it is with doing it that way.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest issue because and of course for 10 years we promoted that as a control option through a provincial bounty program, right? And then the province announced this new bounty program, which is adding confusion and, it's not really providing a clear message to the public on this topic. So we've got a lot of awareness to do on that as well, because it does make the problem worse. We know that from researchers, we know that from land managers down in Texas that have been dealing with it for a long time. Absolutely. But, in Alberta, we take invasive species very seriously, and we were the first to establish an eradication program, now called a control program, first of its kind in Canada. So they set up these remotely monitored corral traps. They're quite involved traps, and they track wild boar using trail cameras, drones, and reports from the public. And the mussel sniffing dogs, you guys, the conservation canines, they're training them to sniff out wild boar scat, which is kind of fun. Yeah, I know. And so we're getting reports from all over the place. When they find a sounder or a breeding group, they set up these corral traps, and then they wait until all of the pigs are inside. They close the door. So this is co-funded through industry as well and the provincial government. So it's a really nice partnership, and this program is really good. It does need more resources, of course, as most provincial programs do, but it is definitely a really good thing and a step in the right direction.
Has it been successful, or is it too early to tell yet?
Great question. So, yes. So preliminary data in one county, so Woodlands County, over 9 years of a bounty program, they're bringing in about 33 wild boar a year through the bounty program. First 3 years of this program, even they had to troubleshoot, like how do you get this gate to close when it's minus 30? There was a lot of issues in the first year. Yeah. First 3 years of this program, over 100 wild boar a year.
Oh, wow.
That's a big jump. Quite an increase. And entire groups removed, so they're not dispersing. They're not, so they're not.
Well, it's better than picking one off once a night.
Absolutely. So even those 33 that were brought in through the bounty program could have been making things worse, right? So we were removing entire groups this way, and we know we are.
So how many of these corrals do we have in the province?
I think there's 12 right now.
Okay.
I think, I could be wrong, but we need more.
But it's still a drop in the amount of boars that there are, right?
And every time they remove a sounder, every time they remove a group, that's a huge win. Like a huge win, right? So it's very exciting. Sorry.
How many would be in a sounder, like?
Totally variable, but like what we saw on the screen, that was a sounder. So it's the females, so adult females and some of their daughters, and then the babies, the piglets, and then the males get booted, and then they roam like looking for mates. So that's why breeding season, there's no mating season, it's just constant. But the boys get booted once they get to a certain age, but it can grow and grow and grow. And I think it was last month they picked up a sounder with 33 pigs in it. Wow. Yeah.
So what do they do with the truck when this is casual?
No.
There's no fences, we don't want to do that.
That's right. So they're euthanized, and the meat is landfilled, and we've received some criticism that that's wasteful, et cetera. But ultimately, we don't ever want to create a demand for any invasive species, because if we are successful in eradicating them, say we were donating that food to a food bank or something, we don't want them to be saying, oh, we need this resource, right? So euthanized and landfilled. Yeah, absolutely. So lots of good work being done, for sure.
I have a good story for you later, but anyway.
So our job is really on the awareness side of things. We actually did a pre-program survey where we polled the public, and by and large, the public were not aware that we have feral pigs or wild boar in the province. And those that are like super gung-ho to hunt them. So we've got a big job to do on creating some awareness here. So this is our core messaging and some of our key partners on this. But basically we want Albertans to know that wild boar are here, they're super damaging. Hunting is not a part of the solution. And we want folks to learn the signs. So we really encourage visiting our website to look at signs, photos of tracks, photos of damage, because a lot of times they're getting misidentified. And we want, of course, everyone to squeal on pigs. So, we've done a lot of different stuff, press releases, billboard rentals. We've got lots of different materials out there. Hopefully you've all heard of the Squeal on Pigs program. I hope. No? Okay, we've got some more work to do.
This is the news thing today.
Today. Okay, well, this is why we're here today. Yeah. And yeah, I think I'm a little over time, but just to sum up, like we were working really hard to empower Albertans to take action so that we can all protect the province from the impacts of invasive species. And yeah, and that's all I have for you today. So thank you for your attention. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. If you have any questions.
Yeah, are there any questions?
Yeah.
Eric?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. So invasive species, just because it's invasive, is it actually a problem? Like, yes, some are to a greater level, but there's a lot of things that are here that are, maybe to a point of almost welcomed. One of the ones I'm thinking of, as far as I understand, the honeybee is not native to North America, it is invasive.
This is a loaded question, and I've got so much. How much time do we? So I will address it quickly. So an invasive species, by definition, is something that is non-native. Not all non-native species become invasive. So I think that kind of addresses the first part of your question, right? So we bring, like cows are a non-native species, kind of similar to honeybees, right? So, but they're obviously beneficial. We like them. They're tasty. You know, corn, canola, like those things are non-native, right? So not all non-native species become invasive. Invasive species, the ones that are regulated in Alberta, have all undergone a risk assessment where they've deemed that they could arrive here. They don't have any natural like conditions or predators or climatic conditions or stresses or temperatures that would suppress their populations, and they're conceivably going to grow uncontrolled, like Canada thistle, things like that, and the weeds that we have on the Weed Control Act. So not all non-native species become invasive, and the ones that we do consider invasive do pose risk to our environment and our economy. Now your honeybee question. So you guys are all going to come to the South Region Ag Service Board Conference. We're going to talk more about that exact question there in Crowsnest Pass in October. So in my spare time, I also run the Alberta Native Bee Council. And so we're focused on native bee conservation. So conservation of the 321 native bee species that we have in the province. And we're not worried about management of domesticated species like honeybees or even alfalfa leafcutter bees, which are very important agricultural species that help us to, achieve the yields in agriculture. But that do pose issues. So they do compete for food with native bees, and they also can spread diseases to native bees. And some of those diseases our native bees have no resistance or adaptations to. So they can be a little bit problematic, but they are very important. So, yeah. But we'll talk more about that on October 22nd in the Crowsnest Pass. The ultimate invasive species, even worse than pigs, I would say, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, are there any more questions? Well, Megan, oh,
No, I was just gonna say thank you very much, and
Oh,
I just
thank you.
wish you were a little more passionate about this.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah,
Great,
thank you very
yeah.
much, Megan. And
Thanks.
like I said, I really enjoyed your passion here, and that was the same this spring. But it's a bigger problem than we all realize, because
It
and
is.
we're very lucky not to have all the wild boars in southern Alberta. But if I heard the comments and everything that was going on in central and northern Alberta, it's a problem. And with the couple of cages that we have, of course, it's just a drop in the bucket that we
Absolutely.
have. And there's got to be a better solution.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to be working on that one, especially because, I mean, the damage that it does is just unreal. But anyway, thank you so
Absolutely.
much again, and
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Here, yeah, thanks. I'll just eject my thingamajigger here. And I'll get out of your hair. Thanks, guys. So nice to be here in person. I usually am at my desk looking at you guys. Oh, I have to close it. That's okay. There we go. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Gary. Good to see you. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, thank you. Nice to meet you. Oh, nice to meet you.
All right, let's, after that passionate speech here from Megan, I think,
She's got a lot of
Gary,
energy.
did you take in? Okay, Gary, and
Yeah.
Jeremy?
Now, to rewind, I think this is something, and this came up at the last organizational meeting. And if you'll look down here under, I've got it up on the board right now, under the official formation, So under the ASB Act, the chair has to be designated by council. That's under the ASB Act. So what we ran into before was we were at the organizational meeting, we were putting in the chair and the vice chair and the voting members. Now, let's just separate off the voting members for a second, okay? Just on the focus of the chair position. So the chair is designated by council at the organizational meeting. The vice chair, and this is in the terms of reference here, the vice chair is voted in by the members of the board. So if you basically, you go to your first ASB meeting, at your ASB meeting, basically the board designates who the vice chair is, or votes on who the vice chair will be.
John?
So appreciating that, but is there anything in that document that says that the chair has to be a member of council, or could it be a member at large? And I get that the logistics of it, it makes much more sense to have that as a member of council.
So the chair has to be
A member of
a
council.
member of council.
Okay.
Okay. Now, as far as when we get into the voting members become something that we've always designated them during the organizational meeting, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case.
By organizational meeting, you mean council organizational
The
meeting?
council
or
organizational
ASB
meeting.
organizational meeting?
No, the council organizational meeting.
Tori?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So then, just given the timeline of council's organizational meeting, the ASB South, and then obviously the provincial, would it be then prudent to follow the council meeting with an organizational meeting of ASB there shortly after then?
Yes. So at that point, then the ASB could nominate who their vice chair, or sorry, we would have to have the at-large members there because they are voting members. Everybody would be a voting member. So the 4 members of council and the 3 members at large would all be voting members. So they would vote on who the vice chair position would be, and then therefore would vote on the members that would be the voting members for the provincial ASB.
Okay, Ann?
I think it would be a really good idea to have an organizational meeting for ASB to get the members of the public and the members of council who are sitting on the ASB sitting down talking about mandates and goals and objectives, because traditionally having all of council, they're aware of what the mandate is, but also tying back into our strategic visioning and planning. So having a session like that for ASB right after the organizational meeting would be prudent, in my opinion.
Okay, and I think with that, they'll be more educated in what is going on, and that it's not that they're just the 3 that are just sitting there that just came in there, and that they can participate in discussions and everything a lot better than before.
Kind of like an orientation.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
And the 3 members at large, what's the process of actually choosing them, or, and is that going to be completed by the time October rolls around?
The hope is that yes, we will have some candidates essentially to be appointed at that point, but I cannot guarantee that process. We'll have to advertise for that. Go ahead.
Ann?
And in other committees, Councillor Kurbis, that we've put out, we've brought the applications back and had a discussion on council, and then council chose the members of the committee.
John?
So just to follow up on that, it's possible that really in October when we have the meeting, worst case scenario is that the ASB board comprises of the 4 council members, in the unlikeliness that there is no members of large that have been appointed or interested in going there yet.
There is always that potential.
Yeah, okay.
But you would have the 4 members of council who would form the quorum.
Yeah, because we are a 7-member of the Agriculture Service Board right now, but it's not necessarily has to be that way. Is that correct?
Correct. Even with the 4 council members and 3 at-large members, I mean, if council designated through the bylaw, they could make that committee a 5-2 or a 3-2. I mean, there's always ways you can comprise that committee. This was just the direction from council, was to move to the 4 members plus a 3 at large to mirror what other municipalities have done.
John?
Well, I was just gonna say, I think the only other outstanding issue that we were talking about earlier was the one that Lauren had brought up in terms of who actually has the ability to vote at the provincial, whether it's just council or whether it's council or members at large.
Okay, is that question going to be answered by staff?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's up to
Okay.
the ASB
Yeah,
committee.
no, I got it. Warren?
Must have been really important because I already forgot what it was.
What, Eric?
Yeah,
Should've let you go first.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we have one voting member from the chair, and then it could very well be that the vice chair can be a member at large and a voting member.
Correct.
And I'm definitely all right with a member at large, especially if the chair is a council member and a vote. They already, it can secure the council's interests, and I'm, not so concerned on a rogue member at that position.
Gary?
One thing to remember is that anything that is held, at an ASB meeting is going to be referred to a council meeting if it involves something monetary. So council in the end is going to have the final say on anything of substance.
It's going to be a recommendation to council.
To council,
Yes.
just like we do now.
Lauren?
Oh, Ann had her hand up first.
Counselor Hickey. Just one thing too, to Counselor Van Essen's point. If we are attempting to get members of the public involved in this, it's prudent that we give them some kind of authority, and so that's something to consider.
Some authority.
Authority.
Our
Lauren?
purpose to be there.
Are you ready now?
Oh, yeah, I can remember what it was now. Thank you. So I just wanted to say that not all municipalities do what the proposal is. Some have had it in the past and gone back to all of council because they had trouble filling the spots. So it's not always as simple as it may seem to get people to do things.
Tori?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will, as this is a final decision of council, I would move the recommendation that, move to council for approval of the ASB bylaw in terms of reference.
Okay, any questions? Tori has recommended that we bring this to this recommendation that was brought here. Can somebody word the whole thing a minute? That exact words? Is that what you did?
Read the
Okay,
recommendation.
okay. Is that what that's the one that you want to move forward? Okay. Then, any questions on that one? John?
Sorry to beat a dead horse, but if we approve this motion, does the bylaw then get sent as written to council for ratification, or in between, can it be tweaked, for lack of a better word, to deal with the Alberta voting members?
And yes.
Yes,
that
if I can have some clarification on how you would like it worded, we'll tweak that for the next week's meeting.
Then it would be up to council to
Yeah,
approve it as amended.
yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Okay, so it's not something that we as council, or as ASB need to provide you. I guess that's where I'm getting at. It would be nice from my end and thought process, to provide administration with direction on how do we want to proceed with that. Are we okay with it just being a council member having a provincial vote, or would we rather have the potential of a member of large having a provincial vote? And if I'm reading this right, I think administration would prefer some direction from us on that.
Absolutely.
Okay, Lawrence?
So when I think about that, I think it should be open to anybody to have that vote at provincial. But the problem I do see kind of arising is you may offend some people by saying council has the final say. You're almost saying that council was going to tell them how to vote on each resolution that comes up. And I think that kind of offends people if they're appointed and they're already told how to vote. I just,
The only thing how I would qualify that is traditionally committees of council are advisory bodies for council. So if you have outside members at large, what they're doing on this committee is they're putting forward their advice to council, and council considers that as a whole.
And that would be the future Agriculture Service Board too. That'd be an advisory
A
council
committee of
to council.
Exactly. That's how I would envision it.
Mhm. Any more? John, one more time?
Yeah, one more time. That's still, we haven't given administration any direction on the question of whether or not a member at large has provincial voting privileges.
The way I understood it was that they do.
Correct. The way the bylaw is written
Yeah.
right now, public members or voting members, councillors appointed to the board are voting members.
Can you share what line item that is at?
It is 12, or right under membership in the bylaw portion,
Yes.
part 3 membership, number
Oh, yeah.
12 and 13. So then it leaves it open,
Yes.
essentially at that time. Now, if the direction from the ASB committee is to, or from council, would be to restrict that and to add in that clause that provincial voting members will be members of council, then that needs to be written into the bylaw as well.
Kind of my thought.
Yeah.
Okay, Eric?
Yeah, so then to John's point, I think it actually, it lays it out in the manner that you wish to see and I wish to see it, that public members are, they have the ability to be voting members and there's nothing banning them from that.
so does that mean then that both, or say if you have 3 public members, but 2 of them could be voting members and nobody from council?
No, the chair has to.
So that's something new, because that never happened in the past.
Mark?
My understanding is that the chair is a council member, correct?
The chair has to be appointed through the act.
So you've got a
Yeah.
guaranteed one, you've got a guaranteed council member that's voting, then your vice chair could be a member at large. Then if your vice chair and your chair, it's decided for your 2 voting members, then a non-council member could be have the provincial vote. And then your alternate could be another council member. So it seems pretty
Clear.
straightforward.
Laura?
Well, I hate to be a stick in the mud, but it only says that council shall appoint a chair. It doesn't say it's going to be a councillor.
We need some clarification then. We can fix that.
So, and then you're saying that only the chair always has to be a voting member provincially.
We are saying whatever you want us to.
That's what it's been in the past.
That's what.
No, it hasn't been.
Oh,
Actually, the chairman of the committee rarely ever voted, or rarely ever was a voting member.
Well, the last chair was. Steve was a voting member, the provincial voting member.
So that needs to be clear.
The prior was, and the one thing we discovered
Right.
was that from the organizational meeting is we were doing that process wrong in the first place, as the voting members should have been designated by the committee itself.
and we were.
Not
just
designate,
doing
we
it-
were just doing it, designating them through the organizational meeting through council, whereas it should have been going to the ASB committee, and the ASB committee designates who those voting members are gonna be, or deliberates on who those are
Who
gonna be.
the other voting member is gonna be.
Yeah,
Because one voting member was appointed by council already.
yeah.
No, you always were appointed both.
No, but I'm talking about what we're
Proposing.
opposing right now, proposing. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under line item 18, vice chair, the board will elect a vice chair from its voting members annually. Is that internal voting or provincial voting? Because else that already selects that person. Okay.
And And I know it's really confusing, but we've been really trying to clean up our committees and our terms of reference and stuff like this, so I'm glad we're having this discussion, because I think it's important to get it right.
Okay, any more questions on the motion that we have before us? John?
Sorry.
I still don't know that we've given administration clear direction on who has provincial voting.
Dory?
So I'm moving that the bylaw is brought forward to council for council's deliberation. That is what there's no input at this point in time in my eyes, because we are moving this, recommending this to council. At the time that it comes before council, council can then deliberate, make changes, amend for approval. And I think to me, this whole conversation, we're going around in circles, because at the end of the day, ASB has no authority over council. We blur the lines at this municipality because we sit in council chambers, we sit in our own chairs, and we run it like a council meeting, and we're the members of council. That's not the same for everyone else, but I think it really blurs the lines. At the end of the day, ASB is a committee of council. Council still has the jurisdiction to make those decisions. We can recommend anything we want to ourselves as council, but we as council, when we sit in these chairs, we don't have to approve anything for that matter. So I think it's important to realize that we are not the deciding body. We are putting recommendations forward. And all I'm saying at this point in time is I'm recommending that we move the bylaw to council, so that council, the decider, has the ability to tweak, amend as we see fit.
Eric?
Thank you. Completely agree, understand fully. Are we able to put something on the bottom that says, and have administration adjust to the best interest, adjust to clarity, to something in,
Bring forward for clarity.
bring forward an amended version?
Or you can just give us direction.
You can just give us direction.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, then I'm willing to move on it, or like, go forward and give.
Because we kind of get the gist of it, so.
Yeah, because the end result's it's gonna be voted by council next week.
Next
or-
week, and we'll have
yeah,
a thorough
yeah,
discussion.
exactly. So we can still go by the motion that Tory brought forward. Everybody okay? Okay, no more questions? Ask for the question. Everybody in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Great, then we'll move on to number 2 of new business. Jeremy.
Oh, I got this one.
Carry on.
So
Gary
the South Region Agriculture Service Board Conference, as you heard from Megan, is going to be in the Crowsnest Pass. And we mentioned earlier, the 25th of October. And the reason we go to these things is to take part in the resolution process. It's important that we send a couple people to vote on the issues at hand. In the past, we've opened it up to all members of the Ag Service Board. So like Megan says, they're planning an exciting event there, so.
Can I?
Okay, but now in this case, I think it's gonna be after the organizational meeting that we are gonna have the the South Conference in the Crowsnest Pass. And?
My opinion is that we kind of have to hold this right now, because we don't know who's going to be on this until, you're right, after the organizational meeting. We also don't know who the members of large, if any, are going to be added. So I think it's kind of premature.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given that this is very generic, it's just basically saying that any members of the Agricultural Services Board wish to attend,
Yeah.
then whoever makes up the Agricultural Services Board at that time then could attend, right?
That's true.
So, rather than sort of tabling this or pushing this off to a future one, because some of us may or may not be on the board, but at that point, then that doesn't matter, right? Because
Could
it's not
secure the spot.
sending a specific individual.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Eric?
And I'd like to move that the Agriculture Service Board recommends to County Council that any member of the South Region Conference and MD of Crowsnest passed in October 2022 be permitted to do so.
Okay, any questions? Comments? Then I'll ask for the question. Anybody in favor? Opposed? It's carried.
Far easier the last time.
Okay, that, John?
Motion to adjourn?
No? Not that far yet. I'm just gonna add question period, and I have a person that wanted to say something. I think Eric wanted to bring something forward.
Question. I think it forwarded that this invasive weed commission board that members at large are on, what does it do and what is it good for? I had a neighbor phone me this morning. He's like, yeah, I get a phone call once a year. Do you want to let your name stand? He's like, we do nothing. What is that, and is it through the county even?
Oh, I'm not sure. Are you talking about the Alberta Invasive Species Council that Megan presented on?
You're talking about the weed thing, right?
The weed
Yeah.
thing.
Okay, I think what you're talking about is the Axe Appeal Committee.
Okay.
So we appoint members and we do hope never to sit because that means we had an appeal. So if everything's going good, you don't have appeals. So if I give a weed notice and somebody doesn't like what's on it or what's done, they can appeal. We haven't had to sit and have one of them meetings for, I don't think there's been one for over 20 years. I don't know if there's ever been one. Yeah, so that would be 22 years ago.
Okay.
And you're right, they don't do anything. It's my hopes they don't have to. It's difficult to find people to sit on that Axe Appeal because there's nothing involved. Yeah.
Regular updated training in the meantime? Like, you know, that's a long
Yeah.
gap in between, are they, like, you know, I'm thinking about emergency management, are they
Yeah.
being kept fresh, or?
So what we do is that each year, if someone drops off and we grab a new person, I'll find somebody to try to sit on there and then put it forward to council. And then we update them on, at that time, one time only for the pests and weed that they would be taking part of. But there's not a lot of upgrading just because it's the same information. We provide them with the axe. We tell them our information, but on how we do things, but we don't want to get too involved because they could be making a decision on what I did. So I don't want to be buddies with and training them to what I want. It's an open discussion, right? Open deal.
Your question is more, should we have a 3 to 5 year refresher training for any member that's just like a subdivision appeal?
Yeah,
Yeah.
22 years is a long time.
What I hear here is that I don't think Gary wants a refresher training. I think he would like to keep this hush-hush, because if you open something up, you can create yourself a lot of problems.
No, not necessarily. If we had some training, it would be good. We could bring in an independent person like Alan from the province that could do the training on that. And we've thought about doing that. Farmers are busy and it's difficult to meet, but if we can get them all together, I do not think that's a bad thing. It's a good thing.
Okay,
Could we,
good.
if something is actually coming forward, it normally takes a while, they could get their training ahead of time.
Well, they could, but I mean,
On an as-needed basis.
yeah, I'll tell you my experience with this. It is impossible to find people to sit on it. It is, I go through a list of people I think will, and the answer is always no. And I tell them exactly what we're doing, and we never meet, and what happens. And it's a hard sell. You could be making a decision on your neighbor on a weed issue. And then you're also making,
Harder part of the sell.
yeah, it is. And you're also, either that or you're making a decision on what our Ag Service Board has done as far as enforcement. And we know a lot of people in the community too, and just like they know that their neighbors, it's a difficult sell.
Thank you.
Okay, can I now have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
I'm gonna give it to Morris.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.